All right, everyone, bringing in the GOAT himself, our Laird, Patrick Laird, Peter Overzet. This is the our Laird book club, but we have a fourth special guest, unannounced. Pat, you're bringing your beautiful little bulldog on the show.
This is Theodore, aka Teddy. He's 8 months old in a couple days.
Does Theodore shake? Does he do any tricks?
Oh my gosh, he has the best tricks. He
The best tricks.
does high five. Should I try to demonstrate?
Yeah, let's see the high five.
Yeah, let's see if we can get him to do it.
Okay. You see him?
This is so California of Pat right now.
Sit. Sit. This is embarrassing. Sit.
There you go. Theo.
He's getting stage fright.
High five. Good job, buddy.
Wow, that was good.
Sit.
That was pretty good.
Give me a hug.
Oh,
Wow, hugs on command. Very useful during quarantine. I feel like, if you're feeling bummy, you have a little bulldog to hang out with you. Dogs, big godsend of quarantine. Feel bad for Peter. No dogs for him.
Well, everyone's trying to get puppies now, but I got this guy back in February, so I was kind of ahead of the curve.
yeah. I always think with people that they don't do enough dog training early, and then they have these like little monsters later in life. So the fact that I see that your dog already can do things like hug and high five, I have very high hopes for his prospects.
Yeah, he also knows a magic trick, which I don't want to do live. Maybe I'll film a video and send it to you guys. You can add it into the video.
Sounds like some good TikTok content.
Yeah, that's
I refuse to participate in TikTok.
There we go. I like
Until
it.
I convince you.
I put a treat behind my back, put it, in a random hand, and I bring it out and I say, "Hey, which hand is it in?" And most of the time, he can select the right hand. So
Wow.
this is Teddy. He probably doesn't want to stay here the whole podcast.
So is he's gonna go back to Miami with you eventually?
Yes, yeah, that's the plan.
Nice. Are you
Whenever you stop bumming off your parents for the summer.
Yeah. So for everyone that wants to know, all right, see you, Teddy. I'm currently living with my parents. It was one of my goals post-college was to not have to move back into my parents' home, but here I am.
You're truly the intern right now. You're how many running backs do you think in the NFL are living at their parents' house right now, if you had to guess?
Philip Lindsay. I remember reading something about him his rookie year. He lived at his parents' home.
In the RB group chat, you guys talking about it? All the running backs are just in there in a group chat, just talking about what they're doing.
Miles Gaskin's back with his family right now in Seattle. I know that. So there's a couple of us.
Do they need to make a meme of you right now that says "raise the rookie wage scale"? Patrick Laird is living in his parents' house right now, something like that.
I actually did read something this morning about upcoming NFLPA and NFL labor negotiations. So definitely, we got to get the intern to the table for these, right?
I voted in the latest ratification. So. I let our team reps handle all that. Are you talking about the negotiation for heading back, or what labor stuff?
If I'm gonna play face up here, I didn't click the article. I just was looking on ESPN this morning and just saw that there are labor negotiations.
Headline reader.
I'm a busy guy. All right, yeah. I'm a busy guy, Pat. I got a lot going on.
Yeah.
So tell us about, because obviously a lot has transpired since we all conferred back in November. Tell us a little bit about what the off season's been like for you, and obviously we want to hear about the externship as well, and kind of just how you're handling all of this differently than you normally would.
Yeah. So January I flew to Hawaii with my girlfriend. We stayed there for a few weeks and hung out, and then came back to California. I've been pretty much in California ever since, except for a trip out to Florida for the Super Bowl week. And we did this thing called the Business Combine that the Dolphins put on for the players that want to do it, where you go for a couple days and you talk to people in different business industries. You kind of learn from them. So that was really cool, and it was a cool time to spend, some good time with your teammates outside of football. And then there's this pitch at the end that you had to come up with a company in 24 hours and then pitch it to this group.
Please pitch us right now, Pat.
What was it?
You got to pitch us, buddy.
What was the name? I posted on my Instagram. Hold on. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name right now.
I hope it's like one of the Silicon Valley disemboweled names, which
That
is two
yeah,
consonants.
from Uncanny Valley. Yeah, I really hope it's like
Yeah, no, it
please.
wasn't like a portmanteau or anything like that. Catalyst Athletes is what we came up with.
Okay.
So the idea was to create like a mentoring service for NFL athletes. We'd start with NFL, but then kind of branch off into other professional athletes, and then eventually college athletes when they get the ability to do so to profit off their name and likeness. But the idea was, there's these platforms like Cameo, and to a lot of people just feel like inauthentic. You're getting paid to just like say, a typewritten thing to some random person that you don't know. So the idea was a lot of us want to mentor young kids, but, with time constraints and all the scheduling it takes, it's kind of hard to do. So it would be basically a platform to allow athletes to mentor young kids, maybe middle school up to high school, maybe college kids that want it. And it just basically takes care of all the scheduling, and basically you just sit down for maybe 30 minutes once a month with the kid that's your mentee and mentor them. And it'd be like a subscription-based thing. And then obviously you want to make it accessible to all kids that maybe some can't afford it. So there might be a sponsorship program, but then also the mentorship videos kind of like this would be posted to the website if the athlete and the mentee allowed it. And then you could get ad revenue from that. So that was like the basic idea. But we didn't win the pitch competition because another group came up with this ridiculous idea that wasn't feasibly possible. So they won.
Oh, the implementation was too difficult. Right, very easy implementation for this business plan.
I actually thought ours, like realistically, like we did revenue projections that I thought were completely realistic.
Yeah.
And then the other group just came up with like this ridiculous thing where they get like 30 million in revenue in year one. Or like, that's not going to happen. That's not possible. But
I mean, this is basically how online poker coaching works, where it's like set up for a subscription model. You get to spend time with people who do what you want to do at a much higher level, and then if those mentorship videos are good, they also get posted to sites where people pay to watch poker videos. Like, this is a model that already exists in like an auxiliary world. So I'm with you. It's a business model that would, like, you have a use case for it for sure.
Yeah, and I get hit up, the genesis of the idea was like I get hit up by a lot of young athletes just asking for advice, and
retweet my highlight tape.
No, I mean, there's kids like genuinely looking for good advice. How do I get faster? What type of drill should I do as a running back? Or maybe my coach isn't liking me as much as I want them to. Like random stuff like that. And I've replied to some of these kids, and I've just realized that the impact is minimal. It's not as much as I would hope. So I think some sort of mentoring service you could do over video, I think would be pretty impactful. But yeah, I don't know if we're going to go forward with it. It's been a few months since we came up with the idea, but I thought it was cool and it was fun to do with my teammates.
Yeah. So then you come back from Florida from doing that. And then when do you end up heading out to DC?
I think it was just a couple weeks later. Yeah. So I think it was in March. It was actually it was the week that the quarantine and everything shut down. I was in DC. So my internship was a 1 week thing. So I got there Sunday night. I started Monday morning. I went to Thursday. And by Thursday, like Monday, I'm shaking hands with all these politicians. And by Thursday, I'm bumping elbows with people close to the senators. But that was incredible. Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia is he's an awesome guy if you get to spend time with him. People ask me, like, do you agree with every political position he has? Probably not. I don't. But the way he thinks about politics is I agree with it. So he's I think statistically, he's like the most center politician in the Senate and maybe in the House and Senate, where he votes with Republican agenda and Democratic agenda. His idea, he goes, I don't care if it's a Democratic idea or a Democrat idea or Republican idea. If it's a good idea, I'll support it. And so I like that. I like that mindset. And it was part of the reason I actually wrote in my cover letter I wanted to intern in his office, and got lucky and they accepted me. And so that was a really cool thing. And then, yeah, Thursday afternoon, they're like, hey, we're going to try this work.
You got to go.
Yeah. Patrick, you can't come back tomorrow. So
Thank you for your 4 days of service to your country. We loved having you.
Yeah, I felt terrible because I was seated with the other interns. There's like, a little cute, like a little back corner of the office where all the interns were, and they were really awesome. They're, college students. And they're like I was like the most spoiled intern ever. On my very first day, I was on the floor of the Senate, talking to other senators. Like,
it's not a meritocracy when you're an NFL player, buddy. No way.
It was totally unfair, and I apologized to him, and I like, hey, you guys out to lunch? Like, let me. And so I bought them lunch.
You tried to assuage your guilt there. I love it. Now, but you got to tell us the story, because initially not everyone knew you were an NFL player at the externship, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I showed up, people were like, "So what is this for?" Like,
what do you do? What do you do?
What do I do? I'm like, what? I work for the Dolphins. I play.
You can't say I work for the Dolphins.
I work for the Dolphins is very disingenuous of you, Patrick. It's very disingenuous.
I don't know if I ever explicitly said that, but I did. Like, people, I told you, I was texting you guys about the story when there's a gym attached to the apartment complex I was staying at, and I go to the gym after one of the day. I think it was the first day, and I'm wearing my suit and tie still. I have this little like computer bag that the NFL PA gave us, and it says NFL PA on it. And the guy goes like, "Hey, you work for the NFL? Like, what's your deal? You fan of the NFL?" I was like, "Oh no, like I got this from the NFL PA." He's like, "Well, what are you doing here?" I'm like, "I'm doing this externship program through the NFL, actually, where they set you up with different, internships in different industries." And he's like, "Oh, that's awesome. Like, what team?" And I was like, "The Miami Dolphins." And he's like, "So, what department are you in?" And I was like, "Well, I play for the team." And he's just like, "What? No way!" And he was
no way.
This guy. And I ended up working out with him a couple days that week because he let me come in and take some of the classes. I did it early in the morning. It kicked my ass. I'm not used to those like workout classes where they're just like going constantly, But he's a super nice guy. We've stayed connected on social media, so it was a pretty funny story.
Goodness, man, you got to hit him with the running back department. That's the next shirt.
I think running back department is good. Assistant to the quarterback also pretty good. Yeah. Both of those are, I think, way better than just being like, I play for the team.
Yeah, I want to come up with an idea that like it's an existing department in some other companies,
Yeah.
Like not just like operations, but if someone out there, that should be a call to action for this podcast, is people, if you can come up with a great descriptor for when people ask me what I do, when I say I work for the Dolphins or something.
Maybe quarterback resources.
Yeah, quarterback resources. Yeah. I don't just assist the quarterback, I also –
You're assistant to the offensive line. Yeah.
Assistant to the offensive line is or offensive line like director or something like that. That could be good.
Yeah. Yeah. So if anyone has ideas out there, I would love to. There's probably some departments out there that makes sense. Yeah, you could put on a t-shirt.
Well, speaking of the running back department, you guys have some new additions in Miami. Have you talked with Jordan Howard and Breida at all?
Yeah. So we're doing Zoom meetings right now. Pretty much everyone in the NFL is doing these virtual Zoom, or not Zoom particularly, but just virtual meetings. And Matt and Jordan they're awesome. They've been in the league a few years, and they know a lot about the game. So it's fun interacting with them and kind of hearing how they approach the game and all that. But it's been minimal just because it's been over Zoom, and our coaches are leading the meetings, and they kind of ask us questions. What would you do here? We have a new offensive coordinator, so we're installing a new playbook. But overall, it's been awesome.
Have you watched Tua highlights yet? Are you starting to get jazzed about playing with him? Have you ever played with a left-handed quarterback before?
Oh, I don't know. I think
they're pretty rare.
No, they think they are. I think one of our our backup JV quarterback at my high school was lefty, if I remember correctly. So it's been a while. Yeah.
Brand new ball game.
No, I haven't seen. I mean, I've obviously watched Alabama play the last few years, but I haven't seen any of his highlight video. I've probably seen some highlights on Instagram or something. So obviously, he's a really good player.
Like outside of, you would already be back in Miami otherwise if it wasn't for COVID right now, right?
Yeah, we would have started workouts April 20th.
Okay. And so was your plan initially you were going to just go home to California until April and then head back out, and now that just keeps getting delayed and delayed?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to be here till I think April. My sister was going to have a baby shower April 11th, and then I was going to fly out on the 12th was my plan. And then, obviously all these events and things got canceled. So we're just waiting to hear back. I mean, there's like talk of coaches going back next week. As we film this, that might be this week. Or as people hear this podcast, that would be this week.
Well, they just said today, and this obviously could change, but they just said some teams were proposing like, oh, let's move where we do our workouts at off season. Like, let's move it to like a more remote space. And for whatever reason, the NFL is like, no, you got to do your training camp at where your training camp always is. I don't actually really get who this is serving, but that came down this morning for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think the idea is just preserving competitive fairness. That's what the word that everyone keeps hearing.
Oh, because some teams could get relocated into like nice spaces and some teams wouldn't be able to.
I would imagine any team moving would end up in a worse situation just because there's so much comfort in being just in your own facility. Everyone has their locker. You're not living in a hotel. You have everything in a very like condensed place. And there's no lag time, so everyone that gets to stay in there, like I imagine all the Florida teams, we would get to use our facilities, and that would be, I think, a big advantage. So, I want to get back, but I guess if teams had to move to somewhere else, that could be a huge bummer.
How have you been organizing kind of your own kind of like fitness and workout in training? Are you doing that all on your own, or is someone kind of writing up a program for you?
So from January when I started training till about March, maybe mid-March, I had been doing my own stuff. Growing up, my parents, they wouldn't pay for any like personal trainer or anything like that. I always begged them to give me like a speed coach, but they never did.
Your mom's going to come in there and say, get out of my office if that's the kind of crap you're saying.
No. So at the time I was bummed about it, but now I look back, I'm like, that was a great blessing.
You learned the value of ingenuity. It made you the man that you are today, Pat.
It really did, and I'm just used to working out on my own and coming up with my own stuff. So I've been doing that, and then the Dolphins strength staff sent out some workouts, so I've been doing their program. And then now, to fulfill like the requirements to get your like daily stipend, you have to participate in the virtual meetings as well as complete the workouts. So they send workouts on our iPhone through this app. And so I've just been doing the workouts on the app as well as some of my own stuff.
What's your favorite workout, and what's the thing you dread the most?
Favorite workout?
Like some people are just like, hey, I just love doing the bench press, but I hate doing cardio.
Pat's got to be a big squats guy.
I was going to say, so in high school, I was obsessed with squats.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember I'd watch like Barry Sanders highlights, and I just see, not that I'm comparing myself to Barry Sanders, but I'm just all his highlights.
Derry Sanders.
And his lower body strength, like his center of mass was so low because his legs look so just like, it's going to come off weird, but like he just has like a thick lower body that keeps his,
Yeah, he's so powerful.
Just say it. He's low key thick, Pat.
And I just saw that. I'm like, I need to get some big, strong legs so I can have a lower center of mass. So I just used to do squats like crazy. I did stupid squat workouts in high school. Now my favorite thing, I love doing sprint workouts. So I like to sprint, and then I've been doing a lot of single leg stuff. So like single leg split squats, rear foot elevated stuff. A lot of single leg plyos has been a big focus of mine, just trying to get like that one cut ability, improve my change of direction. Least favorite thing, this has been consistent exercises. And I totally neglected that in high school. I definitely should have done more, pull-ups and rows, but my back's gotten a lot stronger over the last couple of years as I realize it's more important than you think.
See, I think what you need to be thinking about is a lot of these running backs actually have been going viral during the off season for their kind of creative workouts. We had the
like neurological and strength training at the same time.
Like the proprioception is, I believe, what they call it. With
I mean, you need to like
the half exercise. Yeah. I have one of those in my garage. I've been experimenting with that, and then we have an endo board. I don't know if you guys know what an endo board is. You guys
Yeah,
seen that?
kind of like the board that just balances.
The fancy balance board.
It's the cylinder with the flat board. I got it when I was for my birthday when I was like 10 or 11 because I was really into skateboarding and surfing. Or sorry, not surfing and snowboarding. And so I thought it'd be awesome to have an Indo board. And so I've been kind of experimenting with that. I'll have my girlfriend throw me the ball while I'm balancing on it.
Okay.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know if that would go viral, but if we could get you like juggling flames of some sort while on the Indo board, I think we can really make this happen.
There's definitely something with the dog and the endo board, like he jumps through your legs or something. Like there's something there.
So I actually had Teddy on my Indo board and I was just bouncing on it just for fun.
I mean, that's just good, wholesome, viral content, Pat. You're letting Gesicki just own you.
In that video, they actually don't pan up so you can see the football over the house. So I'm not entirely sure that his
Gesicki
truther. Grown-ass Gesicki is getting called out on this podcast right now.
Pat, how broken are Davis's and I's brains where we can only think of stuff in the form of virality? You're like, oh, I just had a fun, wholesome moment with my girlfriend and dog. We're like, dude, that could have done 5 million views.
So I've already posted more of this dog than I've posted of anything else in my social media history, I guess. So I'm getting the feeling that people are just getting tired of seeing my dog on social media. So I'm trying to limit it a little bit more. But if you guys think it's awesome, then I can keep.
No one ever gets actually those. I actually think that every post can be criticized to some degree or one another. There's always someone who's hating your posts. Who gets mad at dog posts? Who is the person out there that's like, this sickens me. I hate this. Like it seems like one non-controversial thing that you can do on the internet these days.
That is true. Yeah, there's always going to be people that are going to criticize whatever it is. So we should probably address.
Yeah, we should talk about the book probably.
That, but first I was going to just address like real quick, just everything going on in the country right now. We are recording this. Can we say the date?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go for it.
June 3rd, but we're going to delay putting this out just because the climate doesn't feel right. I put out something so yesterday was Blackout Tuesday, and I saw so many people, my black friends, my white friends, pretty much everyone on social media was posting something. And it was like, I was just scrolling through and there was nothing on Instagram except for the only thing that was different were ads. It was always kind of awkward pulling up an ad.
Very, very dystopian, by the way. Like extremely dystopian to have the ads still coming through.
Yeah, I thought they should have paused those. But anyways, in the moment, like I'm still figuring out like activism and social media. Where's the balance? There's so much toxicity with, all this stuff. So I haven't figured out what my stance is. How much does a post do something? But I was just kind of blown away by everyone doing it. And I was like, this is just a moment of solidarity where people want to just come together and just say something like, hey, this is how I feel. Like I want to step in with everyone else and say, I don't like this. You can debate how much it actually helps, but I just felt like, all right, I'm just going to do this. And then I'm gonna put my own spin. I'm going to ask for, what are some good organizations to donate to. I got a lot of good messages, people suggesting stuff. So I'm still parsing through that. I'm going to figure out, the best place to put my money. But still, there's people under the post that are like, stop being divisive. I was like,
stop. What? I don't follow you to be divisive. And literally all you're doing is like, hey, I'd like to make our country better, please.
I was like, I'm going to donate to some businesses that were looted. Like, and someone's like, well, it was those people who were looting. I was like, I don't think business owners were looting their own businesses, breaking their own windows. Like,
yeah,
I'm not supporting the looting, and I'm pro peaceful protests. I know a lot of people are making these arguments for some form of violent protesting or just rioting in general, which I don't agree with. I lean more towards anti-rioting, which sounds ridiculous to have to say, but that's basically my thought right now. But people are just like, they're getting like, if you post this picture that everyone else is posting and trying to stand in solidarity with everyone, and I want to support Black-owned businesses, like that seemed to be some sort of divisive thing. And I was kind of confused by that. But some people are just hard to convince, and there's probably people listening now.
Actually, you don't really have to worry about very many people who are going to be mad about this message listening to this podcast. I've driven them all off by now.
Oh, really?
This Pat, you don't know this about me, but I'm very far to the left, like
Okay.
extremely far. And
So
I'm not someone who's going to get mad and like ridicule someone who doesn't believe the things that I believe in. But
Right.
yeah, like that's just something that is, I don't know. It's just kind of always how I felt about things.
Yeah, no, I followed you on Twitter, so I kind of figured out your political leanings, and I'm all for like all types. I think there's a great balance, or there's great there's positives in having this balance of political spectrum and ideology in whatever country you live in. The only issue is when your ideology includes shutting out even like considering the other side. I know that's a very like center thing to say, but I really believe that it's healthy.
It's hard right now too, because I think about that too. Like I still follow a lot of people that have very divergent political views than me, just because I like seeing those perspectives. It's hard in particular right now though, because generally those perspectives are often showing nuance and kind of individual viewpoints on stuff that might be unique or put me in another spot. Whereas right now, everything is so divided. Like there's a video to share that proves why you're right for whatever your viewpoint is. And it's just this really hard climate right now of just like, you know, someone shows this video, we're right. Oh, well, did you see this video? We're right. And like, we can't relitigate this issue with every single new video. I don't know. It's been very, very frustrating to see how that discourse takes place online where there is no nuance, there is no conversation. Yeah, it's hard.
Well, it has been a masterclass in politics from several conservative-leaning politicians to get people to distrust what their eyes tell them, right? And I mean, I'm not placing a value statement on that compared to what I believe, but it is just completely 100% true that a large effort of several conservative politicians, not all by any means, and political strategists even more so than the politicians themselves, has been to discredit news organizations, right? Like that. I don't even think anyone would. I mean, someone would argue that point just to argue it, but it doesn't mean that it's not true, and that's the thing we're dealing with.
And more on the nuance part with what you just said, what I find troubling is oftentimes people say like, or they want to just lump, like if like the New York Times came out with some problematic reporting, there was just that article that was problematic. If you look at the vast reporting, and I'm not a subscriber of the New York Times, but I'm just saying like, if you look at
most of the reporting's good.
Most of the reporting's good. If they have one, you know, bad article that has a bad source, whatever it is, and they mess up the retraction, it's not an indictment of that newspaper. The same could be said of the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, it's just like people want to just to make the argument easier. If one bad part of one institution if one bad, you know, representation of the institution takes place, they want to just take down the whole institution because it makes the argument easier, and you want to discredit everything they put out, which I don't necessarily think is. No, I don't think it's a good way about going about politics and just conversation and discussion and debate in general.
Does your experience, like when you post that thing on your Instagram, which again is like completely bipartisan,
so center and yeah, like yeah. Who's even getting mad?
Does it impact how you think about the things you publicly share and support or stand by publicly going forward? I mean, there's been this other trend in our circles of fantasy, and I'm sure everywhere people are like, man, I lost all these followers. Even Davis did that post, and I have no problem making fun of Davis for that post.
I got wrecked, by the way. Like I got destroyed.
I bet I did lose followers yesterday. I haven't checked though.
Yeah. So I think that kind of thing is interesting though, from your perspective and your platform. I'm just wondering, how does that affect how you think about that kind of activism going forward?
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, I'm still figuring out like where I stand on all this. Like, do you have a responsibility? At what point do you have a responsibility to say something? Yeah, no, I'm still thinking through it. It doesn't discourage me from posting what I feel and what I say. The reason I usually don't post a lot of that sort of thing on social media is because I just haven't figured out how effective it is. So there's a lot of stuff that like I've found if I encourage kids to read online and I engage with their parents, I've found that to be effective, and I've heard a lot of good stories. So So I like to do that. In 2018, I voted by mail in California, and I posted something about encouraging people to vote, not just in the statewide and national elections, but in their local elections. Here's my mom coming in. I know you guys wanted to meet her.
Oh, I don't know. I just want to make sure Mason was here.
Okay, you want to grab her?
She can say hi if she wants.
Hi, Mrs. Laird.
Hi, how are you? I just
So good.
out, so
Thank you for letting Patrick use your art studio for this recording.
Yeah, we hope he asked permission.
he did. So
Very good. I'm sure he's very nice to you.
Her dog is napping underneath a chair over here.
Oh.
bye.
Bye.
So I'm actually wondering, would you guys, because I've never actually even really talked to Pete about this stuff much, but I think my main political belief as I get a little bit older and a little bit less idealistic as I was when I was like 22 or whatever is just overall less faith in institutions to govern themselves and to find answers to problems for society. And this is private institutions, this is public institutions, this is political parties, just all institutions where a lot of the people in charge of those institutions just want to remain in charge of those institutions. And like, I view a lot of the rioting and a lot of the protests as just exacerbations of that problem, more or less.
And you see that dynamic. I mean, to make an analogy to, NFL front offices, often the incentives aren't aligned, right? Where a GM or whatever wants to maintain their job. So maybe he's in a win now mode and he's not actually making the best decisions for the organization long term. And it's those same things happen, right, too, with politicians. They just maybe want to save their ass in the short term for whatever ancillary benefits they get from that position and aren't actually caring about their constituents or how to really make lives better across the board, which those incentives aligning can always be allow for corruption.
Yeah. So I studied political science at Cal, and every political science major will at some time encounter like the idea that you just look like there's a certain branch of political science that just studies incentives with politicians.
Yeah.
And what's their incentive to get reelected? So you could trace back every choice they make on whether it'll help them get reelected or not. Maybe I'm a little bit too much of an optimist. I don't necessarily believe that. I think there's definitely going to be some other factors that play into their decision making.
I mean, there are politicians who care for sure about their constituents, about their country. Like I don't actually believe that no one cares, right? I don't mean to put that view out in the world that no one cares at all.
Yeah, I think my base argument on like the whole institutions themselves, and like I'm very skeptical of huge government, and I also know that no government, complete libertarianism doesn't work. Even libertarians aren't actually completely, they don't. Actually,
yeah, libertarians are only libertarians as much as like they. Yeah. I've said many mean things about libertarians on this podcast, so no need to go further on that.
There's that range, right? So there's like very small, no government, and then there's very large government. I'm skeptical of both. So, and most people are, I think, you would agree. So
yeah,
it's all about debate to find where is the most effective, where should government be in, social and economic life, where should it not be? I'm all for just what's the best solution. Maybe it's too idealistic to just believe that, but that's what I hope for. That's why I participate in democracy, and that's why I try to have good conversations. I guess to answer Pete's original question about that, that's my idea of participation in democracy, is having just like intimate conversations.
What do you think about ranked choice voting, Pat? That's always my take has been mandatory voting from local to federal levels and ranked choice voting. This has always been my take. And it probably doesn't work in a country with 350 million people, but it works better than the Electoral College does.
Yeah, it's in a way like ranked choice voting gave us Abraham Lincoln, sort of. So at his convention, he went into the Republican convention, when was it, 1860, as like the number 4, like popular, like vote-wise, he's number 4.
Yeah.
But he made allies with every other group as their number 2 guy, And so as no one could get the vast majority of votes, he eventually rose to the top and became the Republican nominee. and ended up being one of the greatest presidents of all time. But I don't know. Yeah, I think there's some cities that have experimented with that. I remember hearing something about it in either a podcast or some article I read.
There are other countries that have it in place.
Did San Francisco do it? I guess we should definitely start to talk about this book.
Yeah, we should. Let's talk about Uncanny Valley.
Hang on, I did want to make one more.
Or like, when are you guys going to talk about the book and not politics? But.
No, anyone who's in for this podcast, they're along for the whole ride, so that'll be fine. But I think the one thing that I've been wrestling with this past week that's hard is we've been talking about like idealism, and what I think it's pushing up against is this politics that's pure pragmatism. And what we see over and over is pragmatism wins out. The ends justify the means. And while I personally don't want to condone, looting and all of the violence that might ensue around it, I also see that as a form of pragmatism in that, hey, the idealism isn't working to get things done. Maybe we do need some pure pragmatism. And that's a hard thing to say because it's like nothing else has worked. And now people are actually talking about this and taking this seriously, which makes me, more sympathetic to that avenue.
Yeah. I guess I would just argue that rioting isn't as pragmatic. Just because it gets attention doesn't mean it's a pragmatic way to start a conversation. I'd say it's more counterproductive than productive. Because how many people see these riots and just don't even want to hear what the argument is for that side?
Well, the counter to that is the people are not the ones making the laws. The people are not the ones enforcing the laws, right? And also, by the way, very big caveat that we need to put in all of this. Peter, Patrick, and myself, we are all well above the line of privilege in all of this, and we are able to talk about all of this as very academic discussion, right? Like literally, we're talking about college courses and ranked choice voting and Abraham Lincoln. Like this is a theoretical discussion to us, and all of us. Obviously, I mean, I guess I don't want to speak for you guys, but mostly I just feel sad, right? I just feel sad to know that so many people are hurting, so many people are having a tough time, and doesn't super seem to feel like a bunch that I can do about it, or that anyone really can, that any one person in all of this can do. So I would encourage all of you, like, I'm scared of getting COVID-19. I really don't want to get it. I really don't want to spread it. I've not been to any marches or anything in my city, and I feel bad about that, so I donated money, and that was the way that I chose to impact the problem. All of you, I'm sure, have solutions of your own, but it's important, I think, to me to say, like, we are able to talk about this in a way because it doesn't impact our day-to-day lives that much, and that is a huge luxury for us. Yeah,
I agree 100% with that. I actually, when I started out with the book, I wrote this thing here. How are three white guys going to talk about, not that white is relevant to this, but I guess, three guys going to talk about this unique
sexism in tech,
this unique experience of this woman in San Francisco. Like, I hope we tread waters carefully and we're respectful. But yeah, I just thought I wrote that down in my book, just thinking like, I should definitely acknowledge that at the beginning. Like,
in a different life, you could have been a tech bro, I think.
I think I was going to say, like, I really love this book, and I think she's an incredible writer. I just didn't agree with some of the premises, and
yeah, that's actually, I thought a point was, like, normally when you read a memoir or a biography or an autobiography, you're not expecting the writing to be like really good. You're like, I'm expecting like a cool story. I'm going to care about the character, but like I was just like, oh, she's a really good writer. Like this could have been a fiction book, and I would have been just as into it. Like I thought she just had a really great way with words and everything.
Yeah. So why don't we set the table, just if people are coming into this a little blind. So we all read over the past month or so this book, Uncanny Valley, a memoir by Anna Wiener. And it basically lays out her path from, she's always been into writing and journalism and literature. And she was working at a publishing house in New York and decided, hey, I want some like more upward mobility. I want to feel like my career is going somewhere. And so she went out to Silicon Valley and started working at some tech companies. She doesn't name them explicitly. Some are more obvious to recognize than others, but this is basically her kind of reconciling this thing of, are these organizations, are they trying to do good in the world, or as for-profit enterprises, do they have more nefarious goals and stuff? And her whole experience is her wrestling with this, wrestling with power structures, wrestling with surveillance, wrestling with a male-dominated industry, and she comes to some conclusions by the end of the book. And like Pat was mentioning, some kind of controversial topics about stuff. Is there anything from the overview that I'm missing there?
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I think it was
I
good.
would say more, I know this seems like a minor point, but her experience is more San Francisco rather than Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Which are they're two different places.
Well, because Silicon Valley also is like a lot of pharmaceutical companies and stuff like that too. And she's more like strict tech startups, right?
Yeah, which are all mainly based in San Francisco, and then will, migrate down if they need to get like a bigger campus, which I think is more rare. But
another thing I wanted to mention is if anyone's reading along with this and enjoyed it, like the book, it really reminded me of another book I read called The Circle, and it's not whatever the social media. There was some terrible show on Netflix called that also, but it was also a book written by Dave Eggers, which was sort of it's sort of a book about Google. And it's a fictional book, but about like a woman who goes and lives on the Google campus, basically.
I haven't read that, but I read his The Heartbreaking Work.
Staggering Genius.
Yeah, I read that, which I thought was
very good book.
Yeah.
So I drew a lot of parallels between those two. So the beginning of the book, she works for this company that is, the Netflix of books, right? That's essentially what they purport to be. And I mean, Peter, if you had to say in your lifetime, how many companies have tried to be, the Netflix of books? I think this is an idea that literally happens like once a year. There will be a new app that purports to be this, and people just like libraries. I do not want the Netflix for books on my phone, though. I thought she drove at the idea of why it tends to be this thing that comes up time after time. People don't actually want to read the books, but they want people to see the app on their phone and think that they're the type of person that reads a lot of books, which is insane, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, so much too. And she talks about this a lot with her frustrations with she talks about the scenes at the parties in San Francisco, but it's people wanting to signal that they are about this life, or that they do these kind of things based on the apps they use, the services they subscribe to, the clothes they wear, the music they listen to, the beliefs. It's like constructing this avatar that you want people to automatically know what you stand for. And that's just kind of a perverse idea, but we all do it in some ways. But she really put it under a magnifying glass of how in San Francisco that kind of behavior runs rampant.
Yeah, I mean that's why I liked the book, was her descriptions. I loved the way she described San Francisco. I'd say it's not as tech centric as she makes it out to be. I mean, there's so many people in the city that don't work in tech. It might be like tech adjacent, but their life doesn't really revolve around hanging around engineers. But I really, that's why I would definitely recommend the book, just because I loved how well she wrote and described different situations. Even if I didn't agree with her conclusions, I was definitely entertained by just how she described who these people were. Because you can definitely, it's like you can imagine like you're meeting these tech bros as she's talking about them.
Yeah.
Peter, what was the first company that she worked at? I did some light internet sleuthing and was not able to figure it out.
I couldn't figure it out either. Did you? I mean, the second company is obviously GitHub.
Is GitHub, yeah.
Did you guys know GitHub? I had to look that one up.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why Peter and I know GitHub is that's where all the work is done on the Bitcoin blockchain, like open source software it's all done. And by the way, literally this whole book, I'm like turning every page and I'm like, mention Bitcoin, like talk about Bitcoin, be like your robotics boyfriend is really into Bitcoin. She mentions cryptocurrency once, but not Bitcoin. I was Peter, I was so mad. Come on.
That was your takeaway, was you wanted more crypto references.
I mean, she's in San Francisco, like mention it one time.
Yeah. And I will also say, Pat, like my day job, I work at a software company, and like all of our developers, their work, and like when I want to go in and look at a roadmap or milestone releases or anything I need for marketing materials, it's all in GitHub. Like if I try to message them about something, they will literally get mad at me. They'll go in GitHub. So like companies now use this as their repositories for all of their software collaboration efforts.
Okay. Yeah, I had to look that one up. I had fun guessing, the different companies and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like Yelp and Microsoft and those ones are kind of fun to do.
So I feel like one of the big things for the first company she worked at, and one of the things where she was first, she was in this fast-paced tech environment. She was getting paid well. She was learning a lot. She felt stimulated. And at the same time, they were dealing with this thing of big data. They were essentially aggregating a lot of data that they could show their clients and say, here, this is how your customers are interacting with your website. Here's how you can maximize returns. And her big kind of existential crisis here was like, first of all, a lot of people as a startup have access to this very valuable information, and she could easily see how this could be leveraged for more nefarious ways, whether, surveillance state, really monitoring whoever on a really granular level. I just feel like in general, it's an interesting conversation point of like where you fall on how concerned you are about data privacy. And I'll just say for me, I almost kind of live my life now with the assumption that nothing I do is private.
Yeah. Same.
I do that too.
Yeah. Where it's like, even to this day, I'm like, at some point, like every porn search I've ever done will probably be on the internet. Like I'm just living my life under that assumption, because it just feels like those leaks, that whatever you do, it is available to someone. And then it's just a leak at some point that allows anyone to see that.
I mean, it's like more or less confirmed in this book that like high up employees at some of these tech companies just have the ability to go in, the back, like someone at your probably someone at your internet service provider has the ability to use one of these tools and just see every request that your computer has made. It's a very big brother implication that like people, and this used to be shocking to people. Like this would have been, 10 years ago, this would have been a shocking revelation. But yeah, I think a lot of reasonable people now are just like, this has actually gone past the point where anyone could even fight against it. And it's just the world we live in.
Right. And it's like, I know all this and I still use Gmail, and I know Gmail is scraping, the words and the people I contact. And they're compiling something. I don't know what it is, but.
Does it make you more like, Davis and I are nobodies, but you as being in the NFL, having a more public persona, does it make you more nervous that like if someone is scrolling through big data sets, like maybe they're looking for names that jump out? Does that make you more nervous, or is it just one and the same to you?
I think it's something that's like cognizant for me, just in the back of my mind, where like in the future, whatever I end up doing, like what sort of like data sets have been compiled about me that, like you said, like what if a hacker gets a hold of, I don't know, like people I've looked at on Instagram, and they can frame the data in a way to make me look weird, or, you know what I mean? It's just, you don't know.
Why is this guy looking at all these dog trick accounts?
I find solace in the fact that, you guys might think I'm a big timer, but when I step into an NFL building, no one knows who I am. So I'm a no-namer in the NFL, which is kind of nice. I can fly.
You're number one to us. You probably are in a great spot where anytime you get recognized, like I assume it's someone who really likes you, like is a huge Dolphins fan or whatever. But like you probably still have anonymity most places you go. Like you're not getting hounded for autographs, like going to go get Thai food.
No, I'm not. It only happened a couple times. Did I tell you I went to get I got Thai food yesterday, and I bumped into someone I knew, which is kind of funny. But
wow, dude, the Matrix just glitched out right there. Yeah.
In my hometown, I grew up in a town of like 17,000 people. So if I go, out to the store or something, I'm usually going to bump into someone that I already know, and we'll catch up. But when I'm in Florida or pretty much anywhere else, I haven't really been bumped into. There was one time actually I was playing blackjack with some fellow teammates when this guy came up and was hanging out with us because he was a big Dolphins fan. So that was like an experience where I was like, said hello, was very nice. I was like, hey, it's great to talk. And then after a while, I was like, hey, we're in the middle of a game. We'd love to talk more, but we're playing this game. So
we're playing blackjack, guy.
Blackjack. That's been the only time I think that.
Actually, I have to follow up on that because did you watch the Last Dance documentary series?
I haven't watched it all. I've only seen like the first 2 or 3.
Okay. Well, it doesn't really matter to this question, but obviously Jordan is notorious for his gambling, the on-plane gambling. I don't think we've ever talked to you about this. You mentioned blackjack. Is there a Miami Dolphins gambling scene? What are your games of choice and who's partaking in these?
So me personally, I don't like, for whatever reason, I've just never liked gambling that much. I think I'm a naturally loss-averse person. So
disappointing to hear.
I know, but I do I like playing poker, but it's like low stakes. Like everyone puts $10 in the pot. You know what I mean? Or you play Liar's Dice and everyone puts in $5.
We really, by the way, should stream the 3 of us playing like a sit and go on Poker Stars or something for sure for like $10. That would get the clicks.
So online poker I used to do, I think when I was like in high school, which I thought was fun, but again I didn't play for that much money because I hate losing money more than I enjoy winning it.
Yeah.
But in the locker room, I don't know. Guys will like bet on random things, but I don't think there's like a go-to game that people like to bet on.
Yeah, in the Jordan doc, they were talking about there'd be the guys up at the front that were playing like dollar hands of blackjack. I think it was like Bill Wennington and guys. And then in the back, they're playing like $5,000, a roll, Liar's Dice, and all that kind of stuff. It's just like the different economies of gambling, even on a single NBA team playing.
Yeah, I heard a story, and I can't divulge the name of the people that were playing, but they were in the team playing. This is years ago, so there's no one on my team that is related to this.
So everyone stop Googling right now.
Yeah. Where someone was just playing poker, and they got up to they bet their whole game check in the back of the plane and lost their whole game check in one plane ride.
Wow, that'd be such a messed up thought to know you run it out on the field and you're like, ain't getting compensated for this.
Yeah, it's just like, well, don't even know what we're doing here.
The gambling thing, like for me, there's too many variables outside of my control. So when I'm playing for money, I want to be able to have control. But even
we gotta send you some poker books.
That's true. Yeah. So I guess you can get more of the odds in your favor. But even when I golf, for whatever reason, I just want to play and try to beat the people I'm playing. But when you start putting money on each hole and doing all this,
Laird,
Laird. I like the purity of the competition itself. Not
you were so high on a pedestal for me like an hour ago, man.
Wow.
No.
It actually just shows that Laird's brain isn't broken and that he can enjoy normal activities without
he can go out and do
dopamine
stuff.
Of gambling.
He can just go out and like enjoy the fresh air with his friends and family instead of like needing, like literally a serotonin rush, like every single shot in order to keep going.
I have a buddy like that loves gambling, and so he'll put big money on games.
This, by the way, we should
without betting.
Yeah, we should. Post COVID-19, we should figure out a golf trip. Actually, that would be a lot of fun. It'd be very fun to play with Pete too, I think.
Yeah, we can play for game checks.
For sure. We'll play for game checks. This was so I think there were a couple interesting things in the book that apply actually more post COVID-19, which was a lot of these workplaces, especially GitHub where she worked, seemed like they started out with a lot of working remote, and then they wanted to have people coming back into the office which actually, as Anna speaks of it, is like bloating, right? It bloats the payroll. It bloats how much these companies are able to accomplish. So I'm kind of wondering if some of these people feel more freed up going back to work from home, like if there's actually like more efficient work lines happening in the tech world, especially because that's that startup culture of like get in there at 8:00 in the morning, don't leave until 9:00 at night. Like, it's just, you're not going to be able to police that when people are working from home.
I'm skeptical of the whole idea. I've seen so many articles and op-eds about this is the end of big offices and central working places. I think there's a reason. There's like a human desire to be around people. I know not everyone's like this. And do you guys mostly work from home? I mean, you guys could have a different perspective, but I feel like
I've never had an office job.
yeah. So everyone wants to make these claims that, things are going to be different now. But I think history says otherwise. Obviously I could be wrong, but I think things will get back to normal. I mean, I know Facebook is talking about moving most of their workforce. I think they're starting with the engineers, the work from home thing, but I think I'm skeptical of that whole idea that everything's going to be remote or more remote than it has been.
People are just too used to going into offices to work. Yeah.
My setup is pretty interesting because I had worked from home 1 day a week, and then obviously with COVID, our department and our whole company's been working remotely, and like my boss and a couple other people in our department, they have like really long commutes into our office, and there has been a lot of discussion about, hey, it's less time commuting. We've been more productive, but to Patrick's point, there is that one element that you miss of like, we bump into each other in the office. We talk things through. It's more streamlined. There's a lot of these informal conversations that happen that are good for not only, teamwork, network building, just getting on the same page. And that is where I think there's the divide right now. And so I'm kind of torn in that I have really enjoyed working from home full time. But on the other hand, I do notice a little of that element missing. And I do think, though, that could be, it's hard because it's like when you hop on a call, it's like, okay, this is a meeting, whatever. It's not you're just going by someone's office and popping in to talk. So it's how do you replicate that? And like anything, I think everyone's situation is going to be so unique for companies. But I do think my company in specific is going to be more open toward, working remotely just based on this kind of trial run we've had.
So I think did we talk about Project Aristotle on the last podcast? I think I might have referenced it.
Yeah, we mentioned it.
The study on like optimal groups and what makes a great group, and Google did that study, and they found one of the things was like vulnerability. So working remotely with these groups, do you think coworkers can become vulnerable and able to expose themselves and put out bad, ideas that could be bad, could be good? Does that develop in a remote setting? Or did it maybe accelerate it as people don't feel like they're behind a screen, so they're not shy about sharing what they actually feel?
Yeah, but I kind of think that would be a reflection of kind of the environment that the office had before and after. Like I'm really close with the core team members I work with, and I can be like just flat out honest, say whatever I want to them, and I don't have to worry about that. But that's a dynamic that already existed in person. Maybe to your point, a company that has more churn and is bringing in new people that they don't have that existing kind of, relationship, then maybe it's much harder to establish that remotely versus if you had already established a baseline for it in person, whereas now we're just transitioning that to an online thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, can those relationships and ability to open up be created remotely?
I think it can, because some of my coworkers I've literally never met in person. Like before Pete and I came to come meet you in New York, we'd known each other for 5 years or so, Pete, and we'd never met before.
Yeah.
What type of personal information have you shared with your coworkers that has allowed you to work better together? And if you haven't, do you think some information would be shared?
I think it's actually compartmentalization. Like I'm probably a different person at work actually not even probably. I'm for sure like a different type of person on podcasts, on work, like in work Slack, like talking to people from work than I would be like, out just in the world. I'm a much quieter, like more bashful version of myself actually in the real world, as opposed to just online and on shows and stuff.
Yeah. I might be opposite actually. I'm more reserved online. I'm like self-conscious about what I post.
Well, that would be normal behavior. That would be non-brain. that would be non-brain broken behavior.
And then like in person, I'm not very opinionated. Like I shouldn't say I'm not opinionated. I have my opinions, but I'm not like, I don't feel like everyone needs to hear them when I'm speaking. But if I do think something needs to be said, I'm not afraid to say it in person. Whereas online, I'll just think twice and I'll be like, I don't need to say anything.
Well, I mean, your post you did the other day is the perfect example. Not one of those commenters having a discussion with you about what your goals and your efforts that you're trying to accomplish with that post would ever say anything to your face about what you did being, disingenuous. Yet online, because everything is so divided, then there was all this room for interpretation, even though there shouldn't be. So I feel the same way, like that there's so many things and conversations that you can have in person that I would never have online because there's no nuance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it obviously gets missed when you're talking to someone on Twitter or whatever. Is first of all, you don't have body language to read. It's like even on a Zoom call, which everyone agrees is not optimal, but still fine. Like you can't read facial expressions, you can't read body language. Like there's nothing to read other than like the words, right? So it's just like more. It's like emailing someone. It's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think video calling is a little bit more intimate. There's a little bit more intimacy with that. But I agree. There's those studies that are coming out now about our brains and how we look at people on screens versus people in real life, the tells that we don't get to see and all that stuff. So that's why I'm skeptical of the poker game with you guys virtually. I can't see your tells and all that, but
well, I was literally going to say an example that ties in directly with that. I have, I went to school in San Diego for college, and I'm still, close with a bunch of my college buddies. We do an annual Vegas trip or somewhere to go play poker, watch NFL. And we just started doing some like Zoom or Google Hangout calls while playing poker online. And I literally had the epiphany of like, yeah, is this as good as if we were all in person together? No. Is it like 90% of the enjoyment? Yes. Like it was a good replica of like the vibe and the things we enjoyed doing. And also it's hilarious. And I'm sure a lot of people have had this realization, like, why haven't we been doing this all along? We all live in different cities, but because I think just because we're busy when you can go outside and go on trips, but we all were like, why aren't we doing this more often? And now, once a month we hop on and have that. And I'm like, this isn't that bad. It works.
Yeah. My friends and I were doing that. We do like the virtual happy hour.
Yeah.
Not that I'm working right now, but they would drop work on that Friday around like 5 or 6, and we all Zoom and just talk and hang out. And it was like my best friends from high school, and we all live in different parts of the country right now. And it's like, why haven't we been doing this? We just saw that everyone else was doing it, so we started doing it too.
Yeah,
just following.
I have heard from some players that I've just seen posting and some tweets about it that they have found the kind of like remote meetings to be very difficult for whatever reason. It sounds like maybe based on kind of how you felt about it, that you also are finding a bit of a disconnect versus the in-person stuff.
I think, yeah, I'd say as far as effectiveness, it's just, there's a loss of information. There's a loss of the pressure you put on yourself. So for Coach Flo, like his whole idea with these meetings, he's like, we're not going to make any excuses. And I 100% agree with that. These meetings are not going to be an excuse to be behind when we show up for fall camp. And I think our team's doing a really good job. It's just like in the meetings and everything, it seems like everyone's grasping the information really well. They're staying on top of the information, the playbook and all that. So I think our team's doing a good job. But you do notice there is a little bit of a loss where if you're in person and the coach is asking you a question, there's no lag. There's no, oh, sorry, I didn't hear that. Can you say that again? You know what I mean? So no matter how much effort and intention you put into the meetings to say, hey, we're not going to lose any ground doing this, there's just going to be a little bit of a loss, which I don't think is going to affect the play, in the fall. I think we're all going to be good. Every team's dealing with this, so it's not going to be some disparity between teams. But I do recognize that there's less of a.
Do you think the rookies are going to be at a disadvantage? Because they're not going to get to physically be in front of the coaches until August.
Yeah, if I was a rookie last year, it would have been hard, I think.
Yeah.
So if I had to go.
This is a very popular take in fantasy football, by the way.
Yeah. One of my buddies, I should start. We call him Mr. Sorby. he started out getting like his teaching credentials while I was in high school at Cal Poly. Well, I was at high school at Mission Prep, but he was at Cal Poly. I think he was getting his master's, but he would sit in on our history class. And now he's a teacher in Northern California. So shout out to Mr. Sorby. And I think he follows you guys. I don't know if you guys have interacted with him, but he's getting into the whole fantasy touting and writing.
Tell him to run away. Run the other direction.
He's really into it. He's like one of you guys with all your like numbers and acronyms that no one understands.
The acronyms. Yeah, this is a very popular, like, serious fantasy football guy. Peter can do the voice better than I will, so I'm not even going to do it. But it's like, you know, I'm worried that these wide receivers coming in, they're not going to have a good rapport built with the quarterbacks. They're going to have a hard time learning a playbook. Timing is going to be an issue for these guys. So, you know, we're not going to expect immediate production from a lot of these rookie wide receivers.
Yeah, I think it's a fair take. It's kind of what I've seen. There's probably like an analysis on like the 2011 season because there was a lockout then.
Yeah, it's the analysis. A lot of what people think is that the defenses were actually further behind, and that's why there was like Eli Manning threw for 5,000 yards that season. You know,
Really?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, in general, like the historical trends are rookie running backs come in and can produce more quickly just by virtue of how the position works, whereas wide receivers and tight ends, whether it's the learning curve or whatever, learning the offense, takes longer for them to produce. And so then the question is like, how much is this going to magnify those kind of existing trends with that? But I think what you're saying is like, even if you're a running back, that would still be really hard to have a camp like this.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't speak for every rookie this year. The rookie class that we have had so far, I mean, they seem like they're pretty good and on top of their stuff. So if you guys are looking to pick up one of our rookies, I'd recommend it. I don't know.
They didn't draft any skill position guys, did they?
Just Tua, right?
Yeah.
That's the only
Malcolm Perry, the quarterback.
Oh man, that guy is so good. That guy is so good at football. You'll like playing with him. I love watching that guy play.
I like people that my cousin went to the Air Force Academy, so I like people that go to the military academies.
Yeah,
it's just I've heard stories about what he had to go through, and so if anyone can make it through that and play football, you have to be a high character person in my mind. So I'm excited to play with him.
Is Malcolm Perry in the running back meetings with you, or is he in the quarterback meetings?
He's in the wide receiver meetings. I think that's public information.
I mean, it's probably public, but no, he's listed as a quarterback or a running back on all the fantasy football websites.
So actually, I can't confirm what meetings he's been in because I've only been in the running back meetings, but I can confirm this. When he introduced himself to the team, he said he played quarterback at Navy and converted to wide receiver. So
gotcha.
Just like Keenan Reynolds.
Wide receiver.
I'm curious so the Dolphins, they draft Tua, and there's so much excitement, like, you know, drafting him to be this franchise cornerstone quarterback, and yet he's a rookie, yet you guys are having to do all this stuff remotely. Like how, and again, only share what you're comfortable sharing, but does he embrace that idea of being like, hey, I got to be a leader? Or is it like, hey, I'm a rook too, I got to learn the ropes? Like, what is that vibe for a franchise quarterback?
It's hard because one, this is my second year, so I don't really have many historical examples to pull from and compare to. And then two, we're not there in person. So it's really hard to judge someone's leadership or, you know, how they are if you don't get to really interact with them in a meeting setting, outside, and just, you know, the locker room, the cafeteria, you know, whatever it is, in workouts. So I really don't know. But from what I've seen, he's carried himself well. He seems prepared in the meetings. But again, we're usually doing, you know, team meeting, special teams, and then you go to your position group. So I'm not really sitting in on the quarterback meetings.
Yeah.
But just from everything I've heard, he seems like a really good guy.
Yeah. That's cool.
So I got a question. I'm reading this book, and I couldn't help but draw some parallels to the fantasy football world.
Let's do it.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any studies on this, but I imagine most of the fantasy football world are young men. Is it?
I'd say like 98% young white guys.
Yeah. So did you guys think about that when you're reading through? And
No, what an absurdly privileged position to like literally not even think about what the female experience would be like. It's very unbecoming of me. But yeah, I mean there are a couple women who do this professionally. Renee Miller used to work for ESPN. There is there is like a niche of it, but it is very much like you would point it out, like your brain would register that as abnormal for the most part. It is a very bro-centric culture.
And I was thinking about that when the author, you pronounce her name Wiener?
That's what I did. I assume it's Wiener or Wiener.
Yeah, Anna Wiener.
She's an Ashkenazi Jew, so it's probably Wiener.
Wiener, okay. So when Wiener was talking about like some of the engineers' reflexive defense of people saying, well, it's mostly men in this, and they were just saying, well, it's only men that are interested in coding and engineering. I don't know. I was just wondering, like in the fantasy football community, do you make that same argument? Why is it?
I mean, yeah, that would be your defense position is, oh, well, only men like football. Only men play fantasy sports, Like it's just a total reactionary thing that is. And it's because football, if that were even true, which I'm not saying it is, it's because football is aggressively marketed towards middle-aged white guys, right? That's just the fact of the matter.
The thing is, though, is I view it that it's similar to like why just general diversity initiatives are important, because you want strong role models that can signal to younger people, hey, this can be you. Like if you're a young girl right now who loves football, there should be more women for you to be able to look up to be like, hey, I could be in the fantasy space when I grow up. That's hard to find now when there's 10 or 20. The visibility is getting better. I know Scott Fishbowl, it's this big community fantasy football tournament that he holds for thousands of people, and he's been getting tons and tons of women invites in to get in there. So trying to create that community. But I do think it's like, I don't buy that argument that like, oh, women aren't as interested. I think it's like, we need to continue to promote women so that other women can see this is a viable path. And we'd love to have you be a part of this, where it probably feels like a boys club to a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure.
Football itself is probably a harder hurdle to get over, just because I don't know the numbers, but it's probably 99.9% of players are boys, from a young age all the way to men. I mean,
yeah.
But the interesting thing was when I played JV my freshman year in high school, my coach was a woman.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
And she was awesome. And she played in this women's league in LA, and she was a really good coach. And so that it's kind of funny, like there's acceptance of people that like join, a predominantly whatever dominated culture of something, if they're really good, but then Wiener was talking about it in the book, like the men just were like, you just carve your own way, fight through it. But it's like,
right. Well, because they want to believe that they are the product of a meritocracy. What you'll learn is when you get inside of any of these things, the people that are at the top, they don't want to be like, oh, well, my parents were rich and I'm white. And so I got a great business degree. And then I got, and then when I walked in to get hired in this building, I looked and dressed like a guy who already fit inside the building. So I got the job, and everyone gave me the benefit of the doubt at every single level, everything I ever did. Literally, no one wants to admit this. No one wants to admit that they get genetically lucky and that they get circumstantially lucky. Like, people hate to admit this. So yeah, they just want to believe that they're a part of a meritocracy, and for them to believe that, they have to believe that it's possible for, black men, black women, white women, whatever. They have to believe that it's also possible for those people to have the same access if they are, smart, talented, whatever, to the positions that they did.
Yeah, I just listened to this podcast. The title of the podcast is called "The Myth of Meritocracy," and I get the arguments and I buy it, and I'm like 100% on board, but I'm wondering, how do you strike a balance between telling people that yes, things aren't necessarily a meritocracy, but you don't want to discourage people from trying
From
to
being
work hard
good.
and trying to be good. Because sometimes you tell people that there's these structural and systematic things that slow you
Well,
down.
have you read Fooled by Randomness? Nassim
Uh,
Taleb?
yeah, no, I haven't. I haven't read it yet.
You'll read it in like 2 hours. It's his books are not super complex to get, but the basic idea is that it can be true that everyone that is successful is hardworking and intelligent, but not everyone who's hardworking and intelligent is going to be successful, because that just wouldn't make any sense if you look at a bell curve of distribution of outcomes for people. There are going to be people who have, 150 IQs and work 16 hours a day, and everything they touch turns to ash, right? Like, it's just because that is the distribution of how things have to work in a society, like that. And it sucks that will be the case for some people. And on the other hand, there will be people who work 16 hours a day and are super smart, and they're on the 99th percentile and they found Google or whatever, right? Because that's just how some things are going to work out for people. And the brain just has a very hard time accepting that random distribution. There's got to be reason for things. There has to be order. And the fact is that there is not.
I agree with that, but it's like, what do you do with that information then?
Yeah.
Do you
And
accept
just
it, or what story do you tell people?
Yeah, I mean, circling back to the initial question about like women in fantasy football, I think you got to continue, and I need to be better about this too. Like, you got to continue to amplify voices, and really the ones who are doing legitimately good work that aren't necessarily hitting their ceiling because of these like ingrained power structures or biases or whatever. Like, we have to continue to amplify them and push them up, so that other people see that and know that those trajectories and paths are possible. And like, just to give you an idea of what, like, say, women in fantasy are working against, and women in a lot of industries, is like, you'll see a fantasy analyst, a male analyst, write something, and he'll get a bunch of replies like going, "You don't know anything. You've never played football. Oh, you think you could go be the GM? You haven't put the pads on." And that's a man who actually knows his stuff but just hasn't played in the league. So then imagine what happens when a woman does the same thing. Not only have you not played the game, whatever, but you're a woman. Women don't know football. You couldn't possibly understand the ins and outs. So it's like, there's 2 or 3 levels of like biases and prejudices that they have to hurdle to just
Literally, it's like a whole extra level of cognitive dissonance to fight through, basically.
Right.
Mina Kimes is really good at this, by the way, at responding to the people who are like, "You don't know anything." Like, she just, I am sure, like, first of all, her mentions are some of the most toxic places on the internet. But she is like very good at handling the trolls. She handles them much more graciously than I ever do.
Well, and also she's by far one of the most brilliant journalists that we have going. Are you familiar with Mina Kimes, Patrick?
No, I'm not.
So
she's literally the best.
She started out as a journalist. She would do a lot of long form pieces for ESPN and ESPN the Mag, and then ESPN realized what a talent she was, and she is now doing more like spots on even just like their talk shows. And she'll be on like Around the Horn and stuff. And then they've also started to use her, like she was doing play-by-play for the Rams preseason. She's just incredibly talented, and she also she has a soft spot in the hearts of all the fantasy football community, because 1, she gets fantasy football, and 2, she enjoys kind of the analytics and evidence-based analysis as opposed
she's like friends with Ben Baldwin and stuff.
Yeah, so she's just very talented, and she's like a great example of someone that, if you're a young woman, wanting to get in this space, like, you'd want to be Mina Kimes. I want to be Mina Kimes.
I want to be Mina Kimes is way more successful than I will ever be, for sure.
Yeah. So
not if you work hard and just try your hardest.
Well, that's the other thing, is like the myth of hard work, the bootstraps myth and stuff. Like, this is all very prevalent in American society, and this really, it's never like named out in this book, but just the idea of like, like, if you just are willing to work this hard, you're willing to grind yourself, you're willing to, what her boss gave her, like, the impossible amount of JavaScript code to learn. And she was like, literally, I don't even have the tools to start with this. But her boss was like, oh yeah, if you just work this hard and figure it out, you'll get it. Like, that's like I think probably pretty hurtful overall for American society. I mean, maybe you guys are probably much harder workers than I am, so maybe you guys disagree.
See, I go back and forth with that because I've listened to all these podcasts and read stuff that breaks all that down, and you see the stats. But then I'm just like, then what do we tell people? How do
well, what you tell people is that
people to work hard.
Working hard is not gonna hurt. What is working hard ever hurt, right? Like, how is that? It's not possible for working really hard and working really diligent to hurt your chances of being successful in your given field. Where it becomes hurtful is situations like where your company expects you to work 80-hour work weeks. What they talk about the 996 of working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week that they model from China. Like, that's not healthy. It's not healthy to be working that much, and it's certainly not helpful to be expecting people to work that much. Maybe in like rocket science, right? Or maybe for people who are working to find the vaccine for coronavirus, you say, okay, like, let's work 16-hour days, let's get this done. But like, do you know about the environments at like hedge funds and stuff like that? Like, have you done any, like, or do you know anyone who works at one? My college roommate happens to work in a hedge fund now, and it's like the most, it's more toxic and more hardworking and gross than even tech culture is.
Like that. And I did investment banking internship. I did like an abridged version. Another internship where I was spoiled, but
extremely lucky, Pat Laird.
I know. It's not fair, but yeah, the investment banking is similar, where it's like show up at 7 a.m., maybe leave around midnight, depending on the schedule and everything and what pitches are due. I got to plug in my computer real quick.
Yeah, you're good.
Pete, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's it's a hard thing to untangle, and it goes back to all that stuff about privilege being able to fast track hard work, or it pours gasoline on the fire, and not all hard work is going to result in similar outcomes because of those things. It's tough.
Because it's not like it's just like telling people that their hard work is not a result of their success. Like, that'll never be a successful message. You'll never be able to tell people who did work their fingers to the bone that it should not be the basis of society and success. Like, that'll just never be a successful message.
And I like those quotes when I've seen a few different varieties of it, where it's like, people, you don't get lucky. It's people who work hard give themselves more chances to get lucky. And I kind of like that thought of, yes, there is luck, but it's let's get our shots on goal, right? Like, if you were working hard and you're getting those shots on goal.
Let's get our red zone trips.
There we go. Yeah, let's get this more focused. But yeah, so I think that's definitely something too, is hard workers give themselves more chances to succeed as well.
I think that's what I like to think. There's all these stories that we tell ourselves of whether why we're hard workers or why we are the way that we are. There's a discussion of whether we have free will or not. We can get into that, probably not on this podcast, but
that's the philosophy after dark edition.
Yeah. But I like the idea of that. Yeah. Just understand that some of your success, or maybe much of your success, was due to environmental factors and things beyond your control, but work as if you have the autonomy to create, the life and success that you want, and live that way each day, but know societally that oftentimes that's not the case for everyone.
Well, what's the high school football locker room quote? This was probably in your high school football locker room, Pat. Success is what happens when opportunity meets preparation. Like, that's like, I mean, this is something that is like one of the thesis statements of Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, which is that, like, these short, pithy sayings that people are like, oh, well, there's no way that can hold some deeper truth, actually do tend to be something that, like, drives at some element of the human condition, which is that success is actually kind of what happens when people work really hard, and then they also are afforded opportunities not afforded to other people for X, Y, and Z. I kind of buy that.
Yeah. It makes intuitive sense to a lot of people. But again, there's so much context to every different stories that you kind of have to look at.
Did they have that in your high school locker room?
No, we ripped off of the Notre Dame play like a champion today thing. I went to a Catholic
Love it.
so.
Did you think of yourself as Rudy every time you came out there?
No, but the Rudy thing's funny.
You were probably the man in high school. You probably just crushed every game, right?
I went to a small school, and
This is Patrick trying to not come off as
yeah, not be like I rushed for 35 touchdowns and 2,000 yards my final season in high school.
Oh my God,
He can't do it.
Hey Pat, if you're worried about coming across like that, just remember you're broadcasting from your mom's paint studio right now.
Yeah.
And you're 2 hours into a podcast that many people have tuned out by now.
Oh yeah, 100%. People aren't listening anymore. My high school career, yes, I had better stats than you mentioned. I would have been a great fantasy football. But for whatever reason, like we had to run the ball a lot. We had a great offensive line, a lot of blocking tight ends. So I ended up averaging like 29 carries a game my senior year. It was ridiculous.
Workhorse.
Yeah.
He doesn't come off the field.
And I started at free safety. I love high school football was awesome.
Okay,
I got another discussion topic related to the book.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had trouble figuring out what her conclusions were. I got some of her critiques. Do you guys think she was saying more technology is bad? What was like the conclusion in this? And then let me add another, like my overall broad discussion I want to talk about. So if more technology is bad, I would make the counter argument that instead of more technology, we should shoot for better technology, better transparency. Because if you look at this analogy, it's kind of imperfect. Let's say there's knowledge out there, and some of that knowledge is harmful in some way. Maybe a scientist discovers something bad about human nature or whatever it is, and it's actually bad to know. Does shutting down knowledge of that is that positive, or do we shoot for more knowledge and more understanding? So I'm trying to think about those two things in terms of technology and society. My argument would be more technology, better technology will eventually create better outcomes rather than slowing technology and its involvement in our lives.
So I think she did answer this in the book. She basically told the story through what app she used to get where, right? So she talks about the ride sharing app, she talks about Uber and Airbnb and Postmates and DoorDash and everything. And she kind of outlines how these apps have become like the delineations between daily life, right? We're we are literally incapable. Many of us, and especially the people in her circle, were reliant on these apps. So I actually, my guess would be, and maybe we'll ask her, right? My guess would be that the author's opinion would be that like better technology actually probably isn't just the answer, but also I don't even know if the questions posed by the books are like answers. I think it's sort of taking the position of like, this is already just kind of gone too far to the point where we are, all of our systems are so reliant on these two companies, right? Like Microsoft and Google and Facebook are responsible for so much of what goes on inside of the United States and really the world in terms of commerce and just the economy, that fighting back against them at this point, like literally might even just be futile.
The thing that I thought she was really driving home is that there's an element of phony altruism to this startup culture where all of these tech gurus, want to say we're doing all this stuff to benefit the world. But the prevailing thing that actually happens is they get venture capital. They're trying to hockey stick for their investors, have, a moonshot, business, because it is a for-profit thing. And I think what really frustrated her was kind of this holier than thou, self-righteous, we're changing the world, when it's like, hey, no, buddy, you're trying to get rich. You're trying to make your investors lots of money so you have whatever freedoms that you then want, with your next step. So I think that's where she got frustrated with the Silicon Valley culture, and that at the end of the day, people are spending less time
thinking about truly impactful things. You know, she mentioned the guys who were very idealistic about, let's create a new city, you know, let's build a city from the ground up. And I think that's what she was hinting at, is like, what are the ways we can use technology in truly altruistic ways, as opposed to just raising a shit ton of money and getting rich.
Yeah.
I think just based on her story, like her boyfriend Ian, right, and then the billionaire.
Want to know more about that guy, by the way? Sounds like a really smart dude.
He does. And then her friend Patrick, who the story about how he became a billionaire is just, that's incredible. But,
you know, he's the founder of Stripe.
Yep, I saw that.
Yeah.
I see. I didn't even Google that. I didn't even know.
I saw him this morning because I was just looking up, reading some reviews and stuff, and I kind of stumbled on him. But what was the point I was making? Yeah, like, so when you were saying like about the companies, yes, they're trying to maximize profit. They're not just these idealistic, we're trying to make the world a better place companies. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's just black and white. I don't think it's either, the companies have to be one or the other.
Yeah, the guys do want to solve some problem they see in society while also becoming billionaires. Both of those things can be true.
Yeah, and I think maybe more technology. So when I say that, more companies doing some of the things that Google and Facebook are doing to create, you know, competition doesn't always lead to better results, but maybe some company disrupts the things that Google and Facebook do. So now Google and Facebook don't have so much control over everyone's life. They don't have access to all the data. There's that. And then it
would take so much money for any company to catch up to them. Like it would take Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and the Google dudes would actually have to all invest in a startup to actually give enough money for anyone to compete with them.
I can't believe you're not
saying that just now just seems so ridiculous because those companies are so.
You are 100% correct though that if there was like a socially conscious version of one of these companies that was like we don't want to harvest your data, yeah, they would do
Davis,
great. I mean,
this is right under your nose. How haven't you brought up basic attention token? This is the hope of what crypto was trying to do. It was some cryptos, yeah. So like Pat, there's this crypto, that basic attention token, which was trying to create a new internet, a new browser experience, whereas there's the currency is to read articles, lots of microtransactions. And I actually do think, I know Davis was joking about why didn't she mention crypto more in the book, but that has been kind of a new wave of like the merger, I think, of kind of techno idealism. But to what you said, you know, some succeeding more than others, and the technology not being quite there to actually execute the idealism. But I think those are the kind of ideas that we're hopefully moving toward, that strip away kind of the power from these centralized structures and still provide people with the tools and utility that they need in their everyday lives.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the commentary on like political power with these young men creating these big companies and text political power in America?
Well, I mean, it is true that if young people were going to vote, and there's a lot of data to suggest that young people just don't vote that much, that a lot of like Google and Amazon and Facebook and everything, like if they wanted to interfere in elections, they could. And, you know, again, there's evidence that you know, that they have, right? That Facebook has interfered in American elections and in some ways. And I mean, this is probably stuff that they never even wanted to deal with, right? Like Facebook, they never wanted to be censors of information in the world, but that's just kind of the way that things have gone. So I thought that was a very poignant discussion, right? That a lot of these young white guys are going to be making decisions way above their pay grade that they never wanted to answer, but just that they kind of got thrust into, more or less.
Right.
Well, take Twitter, for example, right now with what they're wrestling with Trump's tweets. You know, first they came out with a little addendum, you know, read more about mail-in ballots. And then he had the more recent tweet where he was saying thugs, and they hit it as like a
glorifying violence.
Yeah, action or you know, bad content that you had to click through to see. And you know, there's calls for them to deplatform him. Then you have the other side where, you know, Zuckerberg and some of these other guys don't want to censor at all, you know, viewing that as a slippery slope. it's interesting to see Twitter wrestling with that because it is such a huge platform arm for Trump right now.
Yeah, there's an interesting podcast with Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, his head of, I don't know what her title was, but communications or something, dealing with that on Joe Rogan's podcast. And Joe Rogan brought on this guy named Tim Pool. And those four, and Joe Rogan wasn't really part of the debate, but Tim Pool, and it was kind of him versus them censoring people on the Twitter platform. And it would be interesting if they had that discussion again now that Twitter is doing that with politicians. But I don't know. Yeah, it's just like you're watching Jack Dorsey and this other executive defend their policy, and it's like they're still thinking through it in real time.
And that's which is the point she's making, which is like these are gargantuan, like the choices that these men are going to make are going to have impact on millions of lives, and like it's just so the answers are so hard that it's like how could they even be expected to figure it out?
Yeah, and there probably isn't any right answer. I mean, history will look back on it, and historians will make the call on whether it was a net positive, net negative, but you can't test the counterfactual, so you're never really going to know. But I think the one part it almost felt like she was saying political power in the tech industry was unique, but I think political power is inevitable in the maturation of every single industry. It just so happened that the tech industry took over as the most powerful. I think it's like the three biggest companies, like so Microsoft, Apple, and is it Google are all $1 trillion.
Amazon has to be close.
Amazon. I know Microsoft and Amazon are both worth over $1 trillion in market cap. So it just so happens they're like the most powerful in the world, but every industry, steel back in the early 1900s, like those guys, whoever happened to own the steel, were making huge political.
The difference is that those companies were not only inside everyone's homes every day, but like literally in their brains. Like I have my AirPods in right now, this stuff is literally in your brain. It impacts every moment of your life. And, a steel company would not have impacted every second of your life like that.
Yeah, but at the time, infrastructure, all
infrastructure is important. It's just is not as pervasive, and like not only your external life, but like your interior life, right? Like a lot of things that I assume our interior lives are focusing on, like yes, our friends, our family, our dogs, whatever, but like also thinking about podcasts, right? Thinking about these questions overall, right? Thinking about the questions of like the meaning, the role of all this stuff, and like and that's not even to get into the serotonin addiction of like, refreshing for stuff.
And what I think is interesting too, and this is kind of what we've been saying about the immense power that these, app founders wield. And now we see their personal political views reflected and magnified in just very small decisions they make. Whereas, Zuckerberg, more libertarian leaning, it's like just whatever we need to post, let's just provide the platform. Jack Dorsey saying, hey, we should maybe be a little bit more of an editorial gatekeeper to what we allow. And it's like they have these slight, differences in their worldviews that then are magnified writ large because the platforms are so massive and the personalities are so massive. It's a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah. I don't know the solution, but I think it's interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
It's not our job to provide solutions, thank goodness. You're just assistant to the quarterback.
Quarterback resources.
Quarterback resource manager.
I think the reason I don't like the quarterback thing is just I think running back does more than just assist the quarterback.
Okay.
You make the whole systems go. You're the office manager.
Yeah, maybe field not coordinator.
Field manager, field coordinator.
Field manager.
The commenters are going to help us out here.
Yeah, they are. That's right.
Well, here's a question now, Pat. You've lobbied a couple at us kind of tying into this. So one of the things that happened to Anna towards the end of the book is she got very disillusioned with this work. And, yes, she had a safety net. She had great benefits. Her quality of life was really solid, but she felt ultimately a little bit empty with it. And I'm curious too, like for you, like, where does football fall into that framework for you of obviously you love it, but thinking about, down the road and what is going to bring you max joy in life and the things you want to do? How do you think about that of like, you want to be successful, you want to, move forward in your career, but also, finding what are the things where I'm going to, feel really good about what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That was actually literally the next bullet point I have on my piece of paper.
Mind meld again.
Yeah, I know. It's great. It says meaning and work. Are we naive to think that meaning must come out of what we do professionally? Is that a privileged ideology?
It's a very capitalist idea to believe that your life's meaning is related to your work, and not one I buy into at all. I don't want the biggest impacts of my life. Like, I don't want to be the things that I'm proud of that I think about, when my life flashes before my eyes. I don't want the most important stuff to be related to how I fit in the giant cog of capitalism, but that's not a very popular opinion.
But do you feel like you're in a lucky position where
so lucky. I'm talking to you right now and doing my job.
That's what I mean. So like
and I'm talking to you right now and not doing my job.
But you're able, but that's a great point. So like there's people that do work, and I'd say this is probably the vast majority of people that do work, and it's not where they find meaning in life. Yeah. And I almost feel like I don't like when people preach to people and say, you find meaning in what you do for work. I think you can find purpose. You can, work on self-improvement, but not everyone's lucky to, just if they're a writer, I'm not picking on Wiener. That was just a random example that came to my mind. And they quit. They were an accountant and they became a fiction writer, and they just tell everyone, quit what you do and do what you're passionate about. And they just happen to
that's like the most privileged advice in the world of people who have safety nets. Like like many people do not have those safety nets, right? So like some people gotta be manual. Like the way that the world works is we do not place as much value on manual labor as we do on like mental labor these days, but things still need to get built. And there will always be people who, for whatever circumstances of their life, are construction workers, like that, and some people really like that work, right? Some people are like, they love to build stuff and do things with their hands, but some people are just doing it because it's a job. And I mean, it's almost to me like sort of insulting to be like, you got to find your meaning in life from your work. Like some people just hate their job, and that's okay to hate your job.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't like, I think it's like not paternalistic to think that you should tell everyone how to view their work, but condescending maybe, like construction and building homes is like one of the most important jobs.
Yeah, like imagine a world where construction workers went on strike and were like, you got to pay us more, whatever, and then through some crooked way they would get their strike would get struck down, I'm sure, which is a whole other conversation on how money is not distributed fairly for the value of professions or whatever.
But I think it's meaning doesn't have to come through work. There's a lot of people out there that are lucky. Like my dad, he's a surgeon and he loves to perform surgery. So he's lucky. But then he also realizes there's parts of his job that he doesn't like. So he selects and again, another privileged thing to point out, but like he selects the part of his job that he enjoys doing and he appreciates that. But really, like, he's working to provide for his family, and he loves to hang out with his kids. He loves to come to our sports games. Like that's, I think, what he drives him. It's not, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't speak for my dad about that. But there's plenty of people out there that have jobs where when they get off of work, they go and do something that they like.
Yeah. It's just a false premise to say, like, because I derive meaning from my work, then everyone else should. When one, that's not plausible. And two, there are all kinds of other avenues and outlets, like you mentioned, family, hobbies, etc., where we derive meaning.
Sports. I think a lot of people love to just, you go to work, but then
fins up.
You're passionate about your team and you love to cheer for your team, and you have a lot of friends that you meet, and then you show up every Sunday to watch your team and cheer for them.
That's a very real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very real, and there's a lot of people like that. And
I don't ever want to tell anyone where to derive their meaning from. Like derive your meaning or don't, right? Or just be like, I'm just here. I'm trying to take as much from the machine as I can and put as little into the machine as possible and live my life and spend my time on Earth while I'm here. Like I'm fine with that as a mindset too.
And I not that I think we're saying this at all, but just to clarify too, for Anna in the book, you know, she just ran into that dead end for herself personally. And I don't think she was ever saying like, you know, everyone should quit these soul sucking jobs. It was just for her. She like,
she was like, I'm done.
Yeah, she wanted to experience this, and she really did kind of experience everything that kind of culture had to offer her. And then she goes, okay, I experienced it. This isn't ultimately the thing that I want to do for my rest of my life. And then she was able to channel it, which I think is really cool, to be in that culture and then be like, but deep down, I'm a writer and I want to write, and to take this experience, create a text that's really engaging and interesting for people like us to read, and also help her launch a career that I'm guessing she ultimately has found more meaning in. That's a pretty cool story, I think.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. I like those stories, but I also just don't like to neglect other people that aren't able to quit their job.
Yeah.
And start their passion or work for their passion.
Yeah. They don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yes. Okay. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about, I've been thinking about this a lot because we're talking about sports and fandom, and then work. And some people find their meaning in work. And we talked about politics a little bit at the beginning, about tribalism. I know this seems off topic, but I've just been thinking about this a lot. Like why humans act the way they do and get so entrenched in their ideas and where they find meaning. I've been thinking about this idea for a little bit, like tribalism and like evolutionary biology, where we used to just go in tribes like 150 hunter and gatherers, and that's who we stuck with. And then now in a world where there's 350 million people in one country, or 320 million, whatever it is, and we're all in our little communities, and we find something that we become attached to. So it's
because point A and point B aren't far enough away. Like hunter-gatherers, like Cro-Magnons, we're not far enough away for our psychology and wiring to have changed that much, basically, right?
Right.
That's always been my opinion, but I mean, again, I'm sure like there are people listening to this who are being like, no, it's actually because of this. But that's just always been what I've thought, is that people need to attach themselves to some larger meaning to make the time that they spend here on Earth have meaning to themselves. So that's been a part of it.
So do you think what do you think is a healthy outlet for tribalism, and can we ever get away from it? Because right now everyone in politics talks about polarization, tribalism, everyone sticks with their party or whatever ideology it is. I'm wondering if it's like inherent in every single person. We all want to be a part of some community. So you guys are in fantasy football. Right now I'm playing football with my team.
Like right now I'm like a professional athlete.
No, it's just like or there's like there's crazy fans at other stadiums, and like I walk in there, they don't know who I am, but they hate me.
They hate you,
but they love their team. Or you see it with religion, people like love their religious community. Like
but they hate all the other religious communities.
Maybe not, but you find your community that you are a part of, and you love that community. Now, I think sports is maybe a healthy outlet. So if you're a fan of your sports team and you root for the Indianapolis Colts every year, I think it's a healthy outlet. Then there comes a point where it becomes unhealthy. Do you think humans can ever get past that, or is that just going to be something that we are always going to live with? Or even in the book where they're talking about the tech startups or the companies, like people found their value. They're wearing
down for the cause.
Down for the cause.
Exact. And I think, like what you're describing is we have a natural human desire to be a part of communities. Tribalism is a nasty byproduct of communities. And I think it centers around this idea that we can't just be a part of a community in and of itself. Like we then have to say our community is better than other communities. Our religion is better than other religions. Our team is better than other teams. Like we can't just say we appreciate this community and enjoy the benefits from it. It's everyone else is wrong.
everyone else, the way they operate in their communities is wrong. And so that's the question to me, is like, why do we feel like our stuff has to be superior, to why can't we just reap the benefits of a community, enjoy it for what it is?
I almost think it's biological, and we might not be able to get over it. But that's the way you said
I mean, my thing is everyone wants to find a grasp of meaning somewhere, right? And some people find it in religion, some people find it in sports, some people find it in getting super fit, right? CrossFit,
Like fitness communities, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I am just like the most selfish person I know. I find meaning in myself and the things that I like, right? I find meaning in my dogs and my girlfriend and just shit that I like. And I don't feel as much of the need to tribe up, but I don't even think that's like a super healthy mindset either. That's just the mindset that I have adapted for, loads of different complex psychological reasons, I'm sure. But like, everyone feels that need.
I'd argue though that you are in a tribe. You're in the running backs don't matter tribe, and you defend that.
Oh, dude, I do. That's a tribe. That is, because that to me is like a way of life. You're right.
I like, Patrick, you said that like you've been sitting on this and it's just stewing
He like, it's literally written in the margin notes of his stuff. Like if he showed it right now, he'd be like, oh, I'm going to drop this at the end.
People always think I do that. I think my jokes are set up like 15 minutes in advance.
No. I'm just kidding.
I come up with them on the spot.
Yeah,
so I like Peter's point about tribalism versus community. It can be considered two different things.
Yeah.
But I almost wonder, I guess maybe this is me being pessimistic. It's almost like every community or certain people in communities turn to tribalism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even take like really like a very simplistic version of it. Like people will go on Twitter and they'll say, I like the show Breaking Bad. Greatest show ever. And someone will go, that show's so overrated. The Wire's better. It's like, why can't you just let someone like something that they like?
Yeah.
We are all conditioned to have different tastes based on our conditioning growing up that has brought us to this point where Breaking Bad resonates with us. And I'm sharing that with people, but it's no, that show you like is wrong. Like that's how, like you were saying, it is ingrained in our DNA to attack people just for their own conditioned experiences and how they see the world, because it's not how we see it.
I wonder how we get over it.
I mean, even like that's the thing too, when you think about like eating and stuff like that, like when we binge eat, it's literally because our brains are wired to when we're on the Serengeti and we're hunters and gatherers and you stumble across a fig tree and you eat as much as you can because you don't know next time you're going to see.
You don't know the next time you're going to find a fig tree.
Well, now we have foods available every single direction we look, but our brains still eat as if we're not going to get food again for 3 weeks. That's how like messed up our biology is.
We stumbled on Pete's like this. Like Pete loves this. Pete loves to talk about eating and fitness. He's developed like a slight body dysmorphia from how much time he spends on TikTok. But yeah, no, it's going back to Patrick's point of it. Like there are some like biological things that are just hardwired in us that take like actual work and recognition to kind of overcome our natural instincts and reactions to things. Yeah. It's true.
That's why I fight for education. I think more education can never hurt and can lead people to the conclusion that, we have some biological reflexive actions and we can.
Yeah. The more people read, the better the world will be. 100% cosign in inarguable, non-objectable position.
Let's plug the Patrick Laird reading challenge. Give it what's the deal with that this year?
So I guess technically it's still up in the air, but I think it's likely college football will take place. Cal football is going to give out free tickets to the kids that read. They sign up on if you just Google, Cal Bears reading challenge, it should show up. You can sign up. Anyone in California, the Bay Area, or anyone around the country can sign up. Really just a cool way to encourage your kids to read. You'll be sent a journal. And free tickets to, I think the third game of the season is against Cal Poly, which is the college in my hometown. It's actually where my dad played football. So,
oh, nice. I didn't know your dad played football. That's cool.
Yeah, so it's his alma mater, but I think he'll be cheering. Actually, I'll cheer for both teams because the current head coach of Cal Poly is Bo Baldwin, who was my offensive coordinator my last 2 seasons at Cal. And he's my running back coach my junior year. So
Nice.
I guess I'll cheer for both teams.
You're gonna put aside your tribalism and reach across the aisle.
Yes, which I'm working on.
Love it.
Well, I do really feel like we touched it all today. I think Davis, as a reflexive thing at the end of podcasts, will be like, we covered it all. I think we literally covered it all today.
Is that my reflexive thing? Do I do that?
You've said that before, yeah.
There was one more part of the book I thought was hilarious, where she mentioned. You guys remember her mentioning the power broker, where they're talking about building cities?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, everyone pretended that summer to read the power broker or a summary of it.
Yeah.
That was the book I was reading. This is like,
oh, shots
Owned.
fired.
Owned.
It's a thick one.
Have you read it, or are you just pretending to read it?
I'm trying to read it. I started this, I think, the week we played the Patriots, so the end of the season.
Laird comes back to his room after like literally the biggest win. Like the team is just flying high, and he's like, "Guys, I gotta crank out some pages of the Power Broker right now."
I did. I actually read this book on the plane. The way there, not the way back. On the way there, and so I started this late December. I'm on page 489. And there are
you gotta get on the 10 pages in the morning, 10 pages at night train.
I'm inspired by you finishing what was it, James Joyce
Ulysses?
Novel? Yeah, Ulysses. I'm inspired by that, so I promise I'm gonna finish this, but it's just I've read like 4 books in between starting this so far. So I'm cutting away, but I'm also gonna read other books. I'm gonna read the Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
That's probably next. But
you'll like it.
Away.
My internet addiction has made it easier in my brain to be reading one big book and then crush like other small books at the same time, because I spend my whole day multitasking on shit anyway. So I used to just never do that when I was younger. I was like, I got to read one book at a time because I can only keep one thing in my head at a time. But now I'm doing 19 things at all the time anyway. So like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
And everyone, you heard it there first. I inspired Pat Laird, and I think that's a great place to end the show.